Thanks again for joining us. I'm Sammy K. Powers, and this is the PHP Roundtable. This is a live podcast of developers discussing topics that PHP nerds care about. The ultimate goal of this podcast is to learn a little something from each other. If you're listening live and want to be a part of the show, send a tweet to PHP Roundtable with a question, and we'll try to get your question answered if we can. So, before PHP 7 can be released to the production world, it must first go through a series of pre-release versions that people can test on their servers and test it with their apps and make sure everything is kosher. We've seen 2 alpha releases of PHP 7 so far, and the first beta release of PHP 7 was released this past Friday, July 10th. So we might take for granted this whole process of PHP versions getting released regularly, and we might not put too much thought into what goes on behind the scenes with each release. So today we're going to take a closer look at the release management process with a specific focus on PHP 7. And joining us on the roundtable panel are the 2 official PHP 7 release managers. And one, in no particular order, I'm going to start off with Kalle here. Kalle Sommer Nielsen. He helps get PHP working on Windows and has been contributing to the PHP community for close to a decade now. So welcome, Kalle.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. And also Anatol Belski. He has been an avid contributor to PHP for many years and is known as the portability guy, apparently. Welcome, Anatol.
Yeah. Hi, thanks for inviting.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get, I'm going to ask you guys your stories on how you became release managers for PHP 7. But before we do that, for those who don't know, what is a release manager? Anatol, how would you just sum up what a release manager is?
Well, I intentionally didn't read on Wikipedia, and so how I see it, it's a person who tracks the development, who communicates with outside parties, and maybe release manager don't has to care about the whole, but about some part, and this is the person who just organizes the processes and just tracks features. So is it, yeah.
So you guys are like really knowledgeable of what's going on in PHP 7 then as release manager. You kind of have to have your head wrapped around the whole project, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we do. There are so many aspects we have to take care of, notice, communicate about, discuss, and everything. Like we have all the pull requests, we have bug reports, and we have to determine, okay, is this bug important enough to it has to be fixed before the next release, or how do we proceed? Is it okay to break backwards compatibility? And so on. It's discussions like that we take, along with the mailing list, of course, the internals.
Right. So there's a lot of power there, determining the course of PHP, really.
Yeah. Everyone have a say, but you know, in the end, it's us that say, okay, enough is enough.
Right.
Yeah.
This is where we got to draw the line.
So, Kalle, how did you become the release manager, or it's you and Anatol? So, just wanted to hear your side. How did you become the release manager for PHP 7?
Oh, I vouched for it. I wanted to be it. But that was mainly because after 5.6, there was this quiet time. Okay, are we going to go for PHP 5.7? Or are we going to go for PHP 6? Well, the next major version. And I wanted to start that movement. So I said, hey, I wanted to be the release manager. But the process was slow, and eventually it was decided that we're gonna do PHP 7. So we had a vote, and it became me and Anatol in the end.
Were you involved with PHP 6 as well, Anatol?
No.
So you came in closer towards when PHP 7 was decided?
I was involved with internals. You mean in general?
Or just as a release manager, you weren't part of
I
trying to
didn't
be.
want to. I didn't want to.
Ah,
But yeah, I was told just it could be useful because I was making some big patches for PHP7 and was participating on several stuffs. So someone told me just it could be useful, so I volunteered, and now thanks the vote, Kalle and me are okay. Are the release managers.
I think that was Pierre, wasn't it? I think it was Pierre that suggested Anatol to be a release manager, if I'm not mistaken.
okay, cool. So you guys got elected then, like it was kind of like the RFC process where it was sort of like posted, well, like, hey, who should be the release managers, and then people vote.
Uh, Commonly, no. The release managers are usually picked by that one person that actually says, yes, I want to do it. That's how it's been in the past.
Yeah.
But this time we had a few options. So we actually had a little vote, although everyone voted for the same pair, which was me and Anatol. So, yeah.
Cool. So
Yeah,
why do we need
was
release managers for PHP?
Sorry?
What's the purpose of even having release managers for PHP? Why don't we just kind of release things as they get done?
Well, it used to be like that. Well, sort of. It was, okay, now it's time for release. Let's go release it. But you can see a release manager as the project manager for that project or that version. So that release manager knows everything about that version, like the backwards compatibility breaks, the new features, where we're headed, what's acceptable to go in, everything like that. So he or she, I don't think we had a she yet, as a release manager, decides, along with the rest of the development team, what is good for going into that version. And then eventually he or she package that version of PHP into the tarbles, becomes available to all of us.
Cool. Well, Anatol, what actually is part of the release process? What makes up a release of PHP to make it an official release?
Yeah. It's in first place, it's there are different teams. Yeah, so it's a development team and tester team and web team. But actually, the good base is just the good code. So when we see that we are near to the release, we have to ensure that the code is good, the code that goes into there. And this is the very first step. And this is guaranteed by the work of all the teams, plus of course the community. Yeah. So this is like, because it's a continuous testing and so on. So when we see that we have this good code base, then we can tag it, test, package, and so on. Also, to the role of the release manager belongs signing the tarballs and signing the tags, the release tags. So this is, in short, what makes the release.
Cool. So you basically ensure that the code is good. You tag it as whatever release, and then you make the announcement on the PHP website.
Yeah, of course. That's what. Yeah.
So when you tag it, right now with PHP7, since it hasn't been officially released yet, it's in beta. But before it was in beta, it was in alpha, and then before it becomes production, it'll be release candidate, right? So
Yeah.
what are the difference between alpha, beta, and release candidate?
I can take that one. So the first alpha, that's the first preview version, pretty much. You may find features that break, awesome features that you love, and in the next alpha version, they may be gone. Or you may find even more goodies. And once we hit the first beta, that is when we mark, okay, now it's feature freeze. So unless it's a small contained feature, you're probably not going to see more new features, and we're going to focus on stabilizing the build and fixing bugs, pretty much. But we still have a little bit of openness to, okay, maybe it would be smart to add, for example, your pull request into a beta. But things like that, we're still open for that possibility. And when we hit the release candidate, that is pretty much locked down. That is test, 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 and some more tests. So that's the different stages between.
Cool. We'll get to that pull request you're referring to in a little bit, because it's a fun one that's up for discussion right now at the latest and greatest of PHP7 news. But you'd also mentioned sending out the source balls, or source tarballs, I should say. What's involved with making a source tarball?
Well, nothing special. So we have to package them exactly. Yeah.
It's pretty much how you would.
No, there is quite some piece of automation there. So we have a couple of scripts that we run. Then the tarballs are there. Then we have to sign them. Yeah. So every release manager has his GPG key, which is published, and people can check that tarball. That's it.
Got it. Well, so that sounds pretty straightforward then. Just kind of tarballing it up and creating a signature.
Sorry?
You just basically you tarball it up and then create a signature for the tarball. That's basically all you do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, cool. So you guys alluded to the quality assurance a little bit, but what do you guys do specifically as release managers to ensure the quality of the code before it gets tagged?
Yeah.
We look through every commit pretty much. Like, we're both subscribed to the CVS mailing list, so we both overlook every single commit that goes into PHP. And on the sideline, we keep running tests, and we check the bug database, or at least I check it a few times a day to make sure there's nothing critical, and then we communicate on Skype. Okay, is this something worth looking into? Is this something we should fix? And yeah.
Cool. So how do you guys handle backwards compatibility? Because that's something that PHP really focuses on quite a bit. So when you have some options for like some new feature that might break backwards compatibility, how do you deal with that as a release manager?
Yeah. We have to monitor the changes, the RFCs, the features, and then figure out possible issues. Yeah. So this is actually how we work. Yeah. We have to. What we forgot to tell, that we have to write a news file for the release. Yeah. That's it. Okay, but actually, yeah, this is sometimes quite a hard job to find which commit was it, which news was it, and so on. But but actually, for the BC breaks and so on, we have to monitor, just to analyze, monitor, evaluate, and then we come to some conclusion.
Basically, when an RFC is posted, we would require that the RFC states, okay, what are you going to break? What are the impacts of that? For example, the scalar type declarations put a reservation on the word string, which means that some projects cannot use the word string as a class name. So what I'm trying to say is we evaluate the situations. Is it worth breaking backwards compatibility based on the gain of this feature or whatever we're trying to do. Say we're cleaning up something. Is it worth breaking backwards compatibility for cleaning up this thing, which may speed up PHP somewhere else or make this feature possible? So it's all on case-by-case basis evaluation we take. We monitor tests pretty closely. Me and Anatol and a few others looking well into the Windows tests, especially. But else we require that every single commit is green on Travis. So if you break something, you're actually required to go fix it, or it will be reverted, I think. I can't remember. We had an RC discussing something like that back in 5.5, I think it was. Do you remember, Anatol?
Nope.
It's a while ago.
For PHP 5.5, you mean?
Yeah, there was an RC about we had to keep tests green in Travis.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I remember that. Actually, on the Windows side, there is also the continuous integration, the builds, and the automated test runs as well. And I know that Remy Collet is one of the helps good with running the builds early, and I think he runs also the fuzzy tests. Yeah.
The fuzzy tests?
Fuzzy, yeah.
Yeah, what are fuzzy tests?
Or fuzzling is it? Now, what this is? It's so normally, or many people write tests just for positive cases. Yeah, like my function takes string, but the fuzzling. You put there an object instead of string, yeah. So you put kind of very unusual data in there, and then you see what your function does. So that's kind of test.
So basically testing for errors and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, before we went on air, you guys had mentioned something about the Backline process of deciding a base for new releases. The comment was that master was fairly quiet before PHP-NG was merged. So that was something that the release manager decides, right? What branch basically you're going to be working from? Is that the idea?
Well, the release managers are not elected until later on, at least not in 7's case. So it was more, a development team effort. We decided that as a team, and we usually do that. It's not up to the release managers to decide which branch are we gonna base ourselves on. So.
Gotcha. So I want to just step back and look at the differences between the release management process between 5 and 7. Has there been many changes in the release management process?
Actually, not really. There was. We're trying out a new thing by. So when we do a release, we send out 4 emails, 2 different. One to the testing mailing list, the QA, and one to internals and general. And in those mails, we include the hashes and the verification codes for each release, so you can verify this is the official release. This is one from PHP.net, etc., etc. So that's something we're trying out. But else, the release process haven't really changed that much.
Cool. So you guys were mentored in, right, to become release managers from previous release managers?
Yes.
Yeah.
By Ferenc, the release manager of PHP 5.6. Ferenc It's a great guy who teached us many things. But besides that, also any other release manager helps a lot, or just needs to be asked to give some help if we need. And this indeed happened too. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a good connection, and every time there's something revolving a release, everyone's notified. Every release manager of an active branch. So we have Stanislav, we have Julian, me and Anatol, and yeah.
Cool. Well, with all these new features of PHP7, there's obviously going to be some documentation that needs to be written. So how does that get? How does that process work of getting all these new features documented and all that?
Okay, so every time a new feature is added to PHP, we ask of the committer to update a file in the root of the PHP src repository called upgrading to update it with the new constants, functions, and whatever functionality that commit includes or feature, which later on is used by the documentation team to write whatever pages that needs to be done, and generated the skeletons. Like we have a lot of tools to generate a skeleton for a class, for example, all the new exceptions and so on. It can be generated in just a second. But it pretty much happens by the documentation team that picks it up and say, okay, I want to document this feature. And he documents that. But usually we have an upgrading guide done by the final release, the gold version, or GA as some call it. And about, well, most of the new features or removals, whatever, documented in the manual by the time it goes out. But in PHP 7 we have been a little slow, at least so far. There's not been that much new documentation on PHP.NET. Like there's not really any scalar type hints or declarations. So we appreciate all the help we can get. We can help document the features, and I believe you documented your functions, the random int.
Yes.
Yeah.
Text.
We know that Sammy already did it. Yeah.
I'm on top of the game for my contribution to PHP 7. I already have the docs written, although they can be improved. But getting it out there, I thought was quite important. But you don't have to be the author of that extension or whatever the feature is to write the documentation, right? Like a lot of times,
No.
the documentation comes from a third party.
Yeah. I started out as a documentation writer. I still sort of am on the side, but it's pretty much for whoever contributor picks up. Say, okay, I want to write about this feature. Cool, he does that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What should be mentioned probably that there is also a script that shows you which functions are not documented. It's on QA or Kalle? There is a script which runs through and looks what is not documented.
Oh yes, I think it's on PHP.NET. I think we have some documentation tools that actually shows that. This is where all our translations also are managed, like which files are out of date. It also shows which functions are not documented.
Yeah, I had just used that when I was trying to contribute to the docs. I was trying to figure out the whole process, and since the docs all written in this doc book, like XML format, it's very verbose and very kind of difficult to kind of like at first to kind of like wrap your head around what's going on there. But yeah, I did run that script, and I wrote a blog post about it on my website sammyk.me. But I'm trying to find that script that to help you find finding extensions that don't have docs. Here it is. Oh yeah, it's in the doc base repo. under scripts, and the script is called check-missing-docs.php. And that will check the SQLite database that gets generated when you generate the docs, and check it against what functions have documentation, which ones don't. There's a couple of false positives there, but there's quite a bit of stuff that's not documented yet.
There's quite a bit. Yeah. I even think things like reflection, parts of that is still undocumented.
Yes.
Because it's just generated from the skeleton. So we have the undocumented entity on docbook.
Yeah. So lots of ways to get involved there with the documentation process. Yeah. It's a good gateway into contributing to PHP core as well, and writing tests. So speaking of contributing to PHP7, there's been some lively discussion on a recent pull request from yours truly that was changing the behavior a little bit of my feature that I added to PHP7, which is the C-Spring functions. And so basically, for those who don't know, there's two new functions in PHP7 called random_int and random_byte. And you might be asking, why do we have another random function? We already have mtrand and rand, so what's up with this? Well, these two functions generate cryptographically secure pseudo-random numbers and random bytes as well. So these are suitable for use in cryptographically secure environments, and when cryptography is important. So you want to use these to generate, like, if you wanted to generate a password or something, you would want to use these functions and not mtrand and things like that. I mean, obviously there's lots more applications for this, but that's kind of the TLDR. But so right now what happens is, as it tries to find a really good source of random, if there are sort of edge cases where random won't, a good source of random can't be found, and instead of just pulling out some random seed and being like, okay, we'll just use this as our seed and kind of fall back to mtrand or rand, it will error, and when it errors, it throws a warning, and then it just returns false. Well, false in PHP can easily be interpreted as 0, and 0 is not necessarily a good number to use all the time for your cryptographically secure applications. So the PR that I submitted actually changes that functionality to actually throw an exception when a good source of random can't be found. Now, of course, this is a change. This is a backward incompatible change, and so there's a debate going on on GitHub about this. So, Kalle, what exactly is the debate exactly on GitHub?
The debate is that. So, a little background first. In PHP7, most of the engine would change to use exceptions for error cases, unfatal errors. So you would get, say, a type error, you would get a parse error, and so on, in cases where you can actually detect that. Say you have a parse error in an included file, you can actually catch that parse error with a try catch now, which is great. But that is only limited to the actual engine, which means that all the extensions that comes with PHP, the standard library, the MySQLi, PDO, well, PDO is probably bad example, but extensions that comes with the standard distribution does not. And the discussion that goes on is whether or not we should start throwing exceptions in random int and random byte, but that would create an inconsistency with the rest of the library, the extensions, and that is what the debate is about currently. Should we allow these functions to throw exceptions, or shouldn't we, and then wait until 7.1, for example, and then make everything throw exceptions? How are we going to deal with that? And there are both pros and cons for each side. So, yeah. Currently, me and Anatol, we have discussed this a fair bit the last few days, and we believe that consistency is more important at the moment although it's still up for debate, of course. It's not a final verdict. But we believe that consistency is rather important compared to the rest of the library. So that is what the heavy debate is all about at the moment.
So the security on the security side, they're really arguing for having these throw exceptions, just because we really want to be able to handle these problems when a random generator fails, to be able to come up with a random generator, because there are alternatives like OpenSSL pseudo-random bytes function, which will sometimes generate. This is actually, by the way, not a good function to use for cryptographically secure random bytes. It's just the best alternative we have. It's not designed to be to be used for this purpose, but you can fall back to it, and it's much better than using rand or mtrand. So I guess really it comes down to the versus, right? Like we're choosing either security versus consistency. So what is PHP kind of prioritizing at the moment? And it seems like it's leaning more towards consistency, right?
Yeah. Another question is that it's not in the light of what Kalle told. It's not a question which can be solved on a GitHub page, because it's if we create this precedence case. If we create this case, then actually there is no community approval for this. Yeah, so it's not something that should be done this way. It should go to internals. It should be discussed, and yeah, this is the right way we would see to go.
Cool.
So it's yeah.
Yeah. Do you recommend actually just moving this discussions to the internals list so that it could be fleshed out a bit better, or is there a bigger discussion here that can't be kind of fixed before the first release candidate?
We actually talked about that just before the show, that we should move it to the internals discussion. So, and I can see just this very moment you had a new comment on the pull request.
Yeah, I was saying that we should discuss it on the PHP roundtable.
Okay.
Yeah. So no. That not to officially decide on anything, but I just thought we should bring it up because it's kind of fun. You know, it's a little bit of behind the scenes.
It's an interesting case because it also gives a little bit of insight of how we base our decisions.
Yep.
We're all different, but me and Anatol both believe in consistency, which is one of the main hatreds many people have towards PHP.
Right.
It is the inconsistency.
Yes. That's funny you said that, because I was thinking right before this episode is when people say they hate PHP, the number one reason that I hear is that the API is inconsistent and it's all over the place. And I'm like, well, for me it doesn't matter because I've been working with it since PHP 3, and like I'm used to all the inconsistencies. I've never had a consistent API, so for me it's just normal.
Yeah, me too. I have a good example of that. So the API, yes, it's inconsistent. All the array functions have the same parameter order. So you would supply a haystack and then needle, I think. What is it? Yeah, and then the other way around for strings. So there is actually a consistency between those functions. So that argument doesn't always work.
Right.
No, but I started out with PHP, so yeah, you get used to it. Like I come from Denmark, and the Danish number system, once you get over 40, it's completely weird. It's inconsistent with the other languages up here in Scandinavia. And we just learned, okay, that's the name for that number. Simple as that. That's the name for that function. Simple as that. I mean, don't complain about how you make it. It's just a hammer, as Rasmus loves to say, and I think that's a really great quote. What matters is what you build with it. So,
right.
and like at a presentation, he said you can write this beautiful, beautiful algorithm, but in the end, no one really cares because as the end user, they just want to use the page login and everything. Like you can use this fancy MVC framework, or you can just write in a simple form with baked in HTML. It doesn't matter, really. And that's the beauty of PHP.
Right. Well, kind of bring it back to just this PR that we've been discussing here on the C-Spring changes. What would your all's recommendation be for bringing that to the internals list? Now that we kind of know what the debate is, consistency versus security, there's been other proposals of even instead of throwing an exception, just throwing a fatal error and just having it just completely crap out. What would my email be to the internals list to kind of bring this issue up with everyone else?
Yeah. It's like a, so in short, it's exceptions in functions, in core functions. Exceptions in core functions, yeah. So this is the, yeah. Just, but the thing is, it requires to work out that concept, that RFC, how to do it, yeah. And then if we have it, then everyone knows, yeah, we are allowed to do this by this or this rule because we all have accepted this. So this is how, if you're ready to work on this, yeah. So just gather some ideas. What should happen with exceptions in functions, and of course you can link to the discussion on the pull request page. Maybe that would be also interesting. And yeah, the most of concerns is to have sustainable strategy for this, so we don't suddenly don't throw exceptions everywhere, but have a strategy. Yeah.
Right. I think it's wise that you guys are really considering this carefully. It's not like you just shut it down and you're like, oh no, that doesn't comply, so we're just going to kill it. But you want to turn this into a discussion to make sure that we're going in the right direction. So I think you guys are doing a great job of as release managers of spurring this on. And I know Anthony Ferrara, I pinged him in the PHP channel and I was like, hey, can you chime in on this PR? And he was really diligent about it. He's like, I don't want to turn this into like a them versus us kind of thing. So he was like really wise in his refraining from popping in there and being like, oh, it should be this way or that way. So Anthony Ferrara is awesome, and you guys are awesome. So you guys are doing a great job. So I'm gonna send this to the PHP internals list. Although I am a little hesitant about sending any emails to the internals list. My experience so far has been really great with internals and getting the RFC through for the C-Springs originally, but I know since this one's going to be a little bit of a hot topic, I'm going to throw it out there and then let it do its thing. I don't think I'm going to have too many strong opinions after I send the initial email, so we'll see where this ends up going.
Yeah, good. I think it makes full sense. So if you intended to work hard on this, it's the great way. You will box it through. It's no question. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, we're kind of getting closer to wrap-up time, but do you guys have any more PHP7 news? What's kind of the latest and greatest? We already talked about C-Springs.
Yeah. Actually, with I mean, actually with beta, it's feature complete and nothing really new. It stays as great as it is.
We had a little delay on Friday, I guess.
Oh, really? With the beta release?
Yeah, and that was mostly due to. Okay, I'm going to say it was an experimental feature that was going into the Send engine, which apparently had more flaws than it should. There was some edge cases, and I think Anatol ended up tagging beta 1 4 times or something. And we had to revert back.
Yeah.
And we stayed up to like, what was it, 4 a.m. on Tuesday, the first night.
Yeah.
And
So is
trying
the
to stress this out.
But actually, we had time anyway because we had to delay the release. So if you have seen, all the PHP 5 branches was delayed to Friday too as well because we had to delay do it to the OpenSSL release. Yeah, it was new critical OpenSSL release, and we've decided to wait for this.
Yeah, because that big security bug that came in last week, right?
Yeah.
So you guys stay in contact with the release 5 managers quite a bit, right? Because you're, or I'm sorry, I should say release manager for PHP 5, because you guys are on a sort of a similar schedule as far as releases.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is just a number in the end, but every time there's some news, so it could be a security critical feature or whatever, then every release manager is notified, and we usually CC everyone when we send back and mails in between, so everyone's always in the loop of what is going on.
Right. Well, PHP 7, I believe, was slated for September, November, or something, or October-ish area.
November.
Is it November now?
Current November.
November. Okay, cool. Do you feel like we're pretty much projected to hit that date pretty stable?
So far, yes. Although I was hoping for some more feedback with beta 1, so I don't know if there's suddenly gonna come up a lot of cases when we hit RSC. Okay, this doesn't really work. This is simply terrible. Something major, critical, and we have to make another release or two. But luckily, our current timetable is flexible enough to still have a 7.00 release this year. If we go by the 2 weeks release schedule.
Well, you mentioned feedback. Are you talking about bug reports on bugs.php.net?
Yes, bug reports, people on Twitter, blogs, and so on. Like every night, I usually search around the web to see if I can find some people have written about beta 1 or the latest version we have out to see what their impressions are. What are they concerned about? Is this something we should take into consideration? Is something we should discuss? And so on. So I spend a little bit of time on that because I think it helps us quite a bit. Although many people don't seem to be posting the feedback to our lists, sadly.
Well, that kind of brings up something that happened kind of with PSR 7, was that it was this proposal that was submitted and it was in draft mode forever, and then they eventually got it into like a kind of a beta mode or whatever, and when it finally got tagged as like, okay, this is officially it, this is what is set in stone now, that was when people started looking at it, and they started giving all this feedback after it was kind of set in stone. Did that happen between PHP 4 and 5, and do you anticipate any of that happening between 5 and 7?
That's all.
I'm not quite so. To the times of PHP 4, I'm not sure I was involved that much in the question, so...
I wasn't around that much in PHP 4's era. Like, I was around at the last release.
But do you anticipate this happening for 7? Do you feel like people are just going to wait to the last minute, and then once it's tagged as stable, then they'll start kind of really testing it and making sure it works and all that stuff?
I think they're going to wait until after the last minute.
Maybe release candidate 16.
No, we actually had a 5.2 release, and that was release, not at 0.0, but it had 9 release candidates, I think. It's a great example.
Wow.
And such. But, no.
Cool. Well, hopefully all these bugs and everything will get worked out, and when it gets officially tagged as stable, PHP7 will be flying colors, best PHP version yet. I know it is. I've already seen it. It's amazing.
It is already. It is already because there are many articles now about that HHVM is faster than PHP7. Earlier, this question didn't exist,
Well, everybody, I feel like benchmarks are just your lies versus my lies, right? Benchmarks. Well, unless you guys have anything else on this particular topic, I'd like to wrap this thing up with the developer shout-out. And this is actually one of my favorite segments because it recognizes a developer in the community who's just given so much, and this is a way to give back to that developer. And sponsoring the segment is Laracast.com, and they are providing a $50 Amazon gift card to recognize the developer for this episode. So if you don't know what Laracast is, it's basically the Netflix for developers. And if you're listening to PHP Roundtable because you're trying to learn PHP or do something cool, Laracast is something that you're going to absolutely love because it's got tons of screencasts that show step-by-step how to do like really cool things in PHP. And I'm a personal subscriber and learned tons from the guy Jeffrey Way who puts it on. So definitely check out Laracast.com. So for this episode, the panel nominated Dmitry Stogov. Yay, Dmitry. So, Kalle, why did you guys nominate Dmitry for the developer shoutout?
We nominated Dmitry because he is the guy that does all the magical stuff behind the scenes. He is the one that goes in and fixes those hard to debug issues for us mortal ones, so to speak. He's the guy that knows everything about the Send engine, the real core of PHP, and he's the father of the Send engine, I would say, the current father, together with the rest of Send that contributes to it.
Nice.
So that is why we nominated Dmitry.
Great. Well, Dmitry, I will be contacting you soon about getting this gift card to you, and I'll be sending you a custom thank you note for all that you've done for PHP in the community. So thanks again, Dmitry. And finally, let's wrap this thing up with some shameless plugs. So we'll start with Kalle. You got anything that you want to promote?
Oh, no, I think I want to promote. No. I would love for more feedback about PHP7 of all the releases. That's I care about all kinds of feedback. Does PHP7 suck? Is it slow? Is it bad? All these things I want to hear about it, and I want to hear about it. Why? Bug reports, test results, and everything. Or if you're too shy to send to internals, you can mail me directly, and I will bring it up with Anatol. And my mail is kalle@php.net. So it's simple and straightforward.
So it's Kalle, right?
Yes, at php.net.
Cool.
And I love to hear all feedback.
Great.
Even from crazy professors that thinks PHP is poorly designed. I'll take it all, really.
Excellent. Well, Anatol, do you have something to shamelessly plug?
Yeah, I do. May I share my screen for a minute?
Yeah, sure. People who are listening via the audio version won't be able to see it, but yeah, anybody watching on the Google Hangouts will see it.
Right now. Do you see something?
It looks like it's about to come on here. I don't know if is it showing up for you, Kalle?
No.
I just see a
It's just
frozen
a
version of you.
frozen Anatol, yes.
Some web page. Do you see it?
No, it's just a blank screen, unfortunately.
Okay. Too bad. Okay, doesn't matter. I will just tell something. So this is a new extension installer which is called pickle, Pickle, and it's written in PHP. It's available on GitHub. It's a project where some people all already work, and we have some releases, and it is based on the Composer principles, and it uses also Composer and Symfony, and we use Atom, which uses the whole project in background for the tests. So with this extension installer, we hope to build a better possibility to integrate PHP extensions into the Composer project. Like you write a line in the composer.json, and it installs for you everything. Also, we plan to support other PHP implementation like HHVM. So this was my plug, actually.
Cool.
Yeah.
So are you actually working on Pickle?
Yeah, I'm working hard. So now it was going to a bit down because of release management activities, but actually it's planned to do a new release soon and to release a website, because, for example, with this tool you can compile and install an extension directly from GitHub branch. Yeah, so
cool.
And
so
so
it'll compile it for you then, is what you're saying. Like it'll download the source code and then automatically try to download any dependencies it needs and compile everything for you?
Yeah, probably not pulling the dependencies, but compiling already. So, and with pulling the dependencies, it's a bit harder job because it depends on where you are. For example, for Windows, it just fetches. Actually, it's also compatible with pickle, with normal pickle, and for Windows, it just fetches the binaries. For Linux, it fetches the source, compiles it, and adds to PHP INI. So this stuff. With dependencies, I think it's a bit harder. Yeah, but still. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough problem to solve, it sounds like. But I think I brought it up in a couple episodes ago with oh, I'm blanking on his name. P-Threads, Joe.
Joe
Watkins.
Watkins.
Yes, thank you.
Watkins, yeah.
I was talking to him about Pickle, and he's saying that must be really difficult to solve the problem of compiled language and using kind of a composer type thing for compiled language. How are you getting around kind of the root? Like, do I have to be a root in order to install the package or the extensions?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
cool.
It.
So it basically just makes it easier to manage your PHP versions and stuff.
With some some more modern principles, and especially for Composer and for just decentralized, for GitHub, for Bitbucket, for such this stuff. We can also package the extension source. So.
Gotcha. So if I use something like Ubuntu and I use appget to install PHP, would I be able to use Pickle as well to install extensions on that?
You mean in PHP7 or with Pickle?
Yeah. If I install PHP7 in the future with appget, for example.
Yeah, you'll be able. Yeah, it just picks up the PHP that you run with, or you can use an additional option to show which PHP binary you want to use.
Cool. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be fun.
So everyone who's interested, just GitHub, Friends of PHP, Pickle. Yeah, and that's it.
Well, this could be really big for the future of PHP, because yesterday at the Chicago PHP user group, Elizabeth Smith came and talked, and she was talking about a new AST layer in the core the PHP engine, and she said it made it possible to do some really crazy things with extensions, like, for example, add syntax for the hack language as an extension in PHP. So if you had that extension that existed and then installed it with pickle, then suddenly you can kind of quickly get a HHVM-ish version of PHP. Is that what's going on?
With HHVM, no, we used it, so I worked to support it directly. Unfortunately, the external extensions in HHVM are not yet that mature. But we can also support something else like Phalange or something else, any other PHP implementation that exists. Yeah.
Cool, that's awesome. Oh, did you have anything else that you wanted to promote? Sorry, I took it on a tangent there because I was really interested about pickle.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's that was the thing. If
Cool.
everyone is encouraged, so just go there. GitHub, Friends of PHP, pickle, and just take a look, please.
Cool.
Exactly.
For sure. Great. Well, thanks, Kalle and Anatol, for joining for this release management episode. Our next episode is going to be The Only Girl in the Room, inspired by the panel discussion at Midwest PHP by the same name. And should be an interesting, cool topic, roundtable discussion. Also followed by another one that I'm really excited about, documentation and developer experience. And we're going to documentation seems to be kind of the thing that a lot of people forget about, but is so important, and I'm actually quite passionate about it myself. So looking forward to that. If you have something you'd like to share about a topic that PHP nerds care about on the show, definitely let me know. My Twitter handle is SammyK, or just ping the PHP Roundtable. And thanks again, Anatol and Kalle, for joining us, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you very much
Thanks,
for having us.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.